The desperate plea. The crystal spires of Thulia gleamed under the angry red light of their dying sun. High Counselor Isia stood at the observatory window, her translucent skin pulsing with waves of deep blue, the color of mourning among her people. For 9 millennia, the Thulians had built their civilization around harmony and balance, creating marvels of art and technology that blended seamlessly with their world. Now, all of it would soon be ash. The calculations are confirmed, High Counselor, said Science Director Naren, his voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. The stellar instability has accelerated. We have less than 1 cycle before the first major flares begin. Within 3 cycles, Thulia will be uninhabitable. Isia's luminous eyes, swirling pools of silver and violet, remained fixed on the horizon. And our appeals to the Galactic Council? Denied, replied Ambassador Vela, stepping forward. Her crystalline body structure was more pronounced than most Thulians, refracting the crimson sunlight into prism-like patterns across the chamber floor. The Arctuvian hegemony claims resource constraints. The Meridian Collective cited their non-interference doctrine. The Xanthi Empire, she hesitated, suggested our evolutionary cycle had run its natural course. A hushed silence fell over the council chamber. 8 billion Thulians faced extinction, and the advanced civilizations they had long observed from afar had deemed them unworthy of salvation. What of our knowledge? Asked Elder Torin, his ancient voice quavering. Surely 9,000 years of philosophy, art, and scientific discovery must count for something. The galactic powers use different metrics of value, Elder Vela explained. Our focus on internal harmony rather than expansion, our lack of military technologies, our limited interstellar presence, these make us unattractive as allies or refugees. High Counselor Isia turned from the window at last, her skin now rippling with determination, pulses of amber light moving across her translucent form. If the powerful will not listen, perhaps the compassionate will, she said. Prepare the beacon. The beacon was never meant to be used, a desperate measure created for a desperate time. Unlike their precise communications with known civilizations, the beacon would broadcast Thulia's plea to every corner of the galaxy, to any beings capable of receiving it. Most Thulian scientists considered it a waste of precious resources, but Isia had insisted on its construction when the first signs of their sun's instability appeared. For 3 days, the finest minds on Thulia worked to encode their message. A simple plea for help, coordinates to their world, and basic information about their people and their plight. Then, with a solemn ceremony attended by thousands, High Counselor Isia activated the beacon. To any who hear this message, she spoke as the transmission began. We are the Thulians. Our world dies. We ask not for technology or wealth, but for mercy, for the chance to survive. Please help us. The signal raced outward at the speed of light, crossing vast empty reaches of space, passing through the territories of indifferent empires, reaching toward the spiral arms where younger civilizations dwelled. Most who received it dismissed it immediately. Some never detected it at all. A few noted it as an interesting cultural artifact before returning to their own concerns. But in a modestly sized facility on a blue-green planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star, a young scientist named Maya Chen sat up straight in her chair as her translation algorithm decoded the alien message. Director Powell, she called, her voice tight with excitement. You need to see this. Earth had achieved faster than light travel only 15 years earlier. Humanity had established small colonies on 3 nearby star systems and made cautious contact with 2 alien species. They were newcomers to the galactic community, still viewed with suspicion by some of the older civilizations. It's a distress call, Maya explained to Director Powell and the rapidly assembling team. From a civilization called the Thulians. Their sun is dying, becoming unstable. They're facing extinction, and no one else is helping them. Asked Powell, studying the translated message. According to this, they've asked several advanced civilizations. All refused. Powell's weathered face hardened. How much time do they have? Based on the stellar data they included, less than 18 months before catastrophic flares begin. And how far away are they? Maya swallowed hard. 37 light years. The room fell silent. Earth's fastest ships could make the journey in approximately 6 months, but they were few in number and small in capacity. The logistics of saving an entire civilization seemed impossible. "Get me the UN Secretary-General," Powell said finally, "and prepare a full briefing package. We're taking this to the Global Council." Within days, the Thulian message had spread across Earth. News feeds were filled with images of the crystal beings and their beautiful world. Debates raged in government chambers and living rooms alike. Could humanity help? Should they help? What would it cost? In the Global Council chamber in Geneva, representatives from Earth's nations and colony worlds gathered for an emergency session. "We simply don't have the resources," argued the economic minister. "Our fleet consists of 27 interstellar vessels, most designed for exploration or small-scale colonization. Even if we diverted every ship, we could transport perhaps 30,000 refugees. And the Thulians number in the billions," added the science minister grimly. Secretary-General Amara Okafor stood silently through these presentations, her face betraying nothing. When all had spoken, she finally addressed the assembly. "Throughout our history," she began, "humanity has faced impossible challenges. The impossible has never stopped us before." She paused, looking around the chamber. "We will not be the civilization that ignores a cry for help." The plan that emerged was audacious, perhaps foolhardy. Earth would convert every available ship to rescue operations. New vessels would be constructed at unprecedented speed. The colonies would be asked to prepare for refugees. And most controversially, humanity would attempt to modify Thulian technology to create a bridge between their worlds. Captain Alejandro Reyes stood on the bridge of the ESV Horizon, Earth's newest and fastest ship. A career military officer turned explorer, he had volunteered immediately when the Thulian mission was announced. Now, as Earth receded on the view screen, he felt the weight of responsibility settle onto his shoulders. "Final jump calculations complete, Captain," reported navigator Susan Kim. "We're ready for FTL." Reyes nodded. "Communications, send final status to Earth Control." Lieutenant Marcus Chen, Maya's brother, turned from his console. "Message sent, sir. Earth Control wishes us Godspeed." Reyes looked around at his crew, 80 of Earth's finest, chosen from thousands of volunteers. Behind them in stasis were engineers, doctors, and diplomats who would work to save a dying world. "Engage FTL drive," Reyes ordered. "Let's go meet our new friends." As the horizon disappeared into the depths of space, back on Earth, humanity continued its preparations. Shipyards worked around the clock. Refugee centers were designed and built. Volunteers trained to welcome a species unlike any humans had encountered before. And across the galaxy, word began to spread of the young species that had answered a call everyone else had ignored: the crossing of worlds. The horizon emerged from FTL travel at the edge of the Thulian system, its sensors immediately detecting the ominous activity of the dying star. Lieutenant Chen surveyed his readings with concern. "Captain, solar activity is higher than predicted. The star has accelerated into early stages of instability." Captain Rice frowned. "How much time does that leave us?" Dr. Emily Nakamura, the mission's chief astrophysicist, studied the data with grim concentration. 10 months at most before the first major flares. The models suggest complete habitability collapse within 14 months. "So we have less time than we thought," Rice concluded. "Contact the Thulians, Lieutenant. Let them know we've arrived." The message that returned was filled with confusion. The Thulians had difficulty believing that anyone had actually responded to their plea, let alone traveled so far to help them. Upon landing, the human delegation was met by a reception of bewildered Thulian officials. High Counselor Izia herself came to greet them, her crystalline form pulsing with waves of color that the human translators struggled to interpret. "You came," she said simply. "Why?" Captain Rice, standing before his team in the crystalline reception chamber, smiled slightly. "Because you asked for help." The Thulian council members exchanged glances, their bodies flickering with rapid color changes. "But what do you gain from this?" asked Science Director Naren, his tone suggesting genuine confusion rather than suspicion. Dr. Maya Chen stepped forward. "High Counselor, Director, my name is Dr. Maya Chen. I was the first human to decode your message." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "In our history, we have faced many disasters, some natural, some of our own making. We learned that survival often depends on the compassion of others. But you risked so much," said Ambassador Vela. "Your ships, your people." "That's what humans do," replied Engineer Commander Jackson. "We take risks, especially when the alternative is standing by while others suffer." The meeting lasted hours as humans and Thulians began to understand each other. The humans were stunned by the beauty of Thulian architecture and art. Structures that seemed to grow organically from the landscape, music that could be both heard and seen as colors in the air. The Thulians were equally fascinated by human adaptability and emotional depth. As days passed, work began in earnest. The human engineers, working alongside Thulian scientists, began the process of adapting Thulian shuttles to be compatible with human rescue ships. Medical teams studied Thulian physiology to ensure they could survive Earth's environment. Diplomats from both worlds drafted agreements for resettlement. Unknown to both species, they were being observed. Cloaked ships from the Arctuvian hegemony, the Meridian Collective, and other advanced civilizations hovered at the edge of the system, monitoring the unlikely alliance with growing interest. "Most irregular," commented observer Saul of the Meridian Collective. "The humans expend tremendous resources with no strategic benefit. Their behavior defies rational analysis," agreed Overseer Krav of the hegemony. "They cannot possibly save more than a fraction of the Thulian population. Yet they proceed as if success is assured." "Perhaps," suggested a third observer, "we should revise our understanding of rational." Back on Thulia, the impossible work continued. Earth had dispatched 17 more ships, each larger than the horizon. But even with this fleet, the math remained daunting. Billions of Thulians, limited space on human vessels, and a star growing more unstable by the day. Captain Rice and High Counselor Izia stood in the central command center they had established, reviewing evacuation plans. "Even with our combined fleets," Rice admitted, "we can transport perhaps 40 million of your people before the major flares begin." Izia's skin dimmed to a deep blue. "From 8 billion to 40 million. So few." "It's not enough," Rice agreed. "But we don't intend to stop there." He explained Earth's audacious plan to establish way stations at strategic points between Thulia and Earth, where refugees could be transferred to fresh ships and the original vessels could return for more. Meanwhile, Earth's engineers were working on adapting Thulian crystal technology to create stable wormhole anchors. Theoretical science made desperate reality. "Your people believe they can create stable wormholes?" asked Science Director Naren, his skepticism evident. "Even the Arctuvians have only achieved temporary bridges." Engineer Commander Jackson smiled. "The Arctuvians aren't facing extinction. Amazing what proper motivation can accomplish." As the evacuation began, priority was given to children, genetic repositories, scholars, and keepers of Thulian culture and history. Each departing ship carried thousands of crystalline beings and the essence of their civilization. Art, music, philosophy, science. The watching civilizations noted the organizational efficiency with curiosity. Humans, it seemed, had considerable experience with refugee crisis and evacuation protocols. 3 months into the operation, disaster struck. A premature solar flare damaged 2 human ships and one of the orbital transfer stations. 16 humans and over 200 Thulians lost their lives. In the aftermath, Captain Rice found High Counselor Isia in the memorial garden the Thulians had created for the fallen. "Why do you continue?" she asked, her voice like crystal chimes in a storm. "After losing your people." Rice looked up at the angry red star visible through Thulia's atmosphere. "Because giving up would dishonor their sacrifice." The next day, something unexpected happened. 3 massive ships entered the Thulian system, vessels of Arctuvian design, but bearing no official markings. "We are independent operators," explained the Arctuvian captain when hailed. "We have reconsidered the Thulian situation. We offer our ships and crews to assist in the evacuation." Within weeks, more ships arrived. Meridian, Xanthi, even representatives of species the Thulians had never encountered. Some came officially, others as independent volunteers, a fiction that allowed their governments to maintain their non-interference policies while still participating. The watching had become doing. On Earth, preparations accelerated. The first Thulian refugees arrived to communities ready to welcome them. Special habitats had been constructed to match Thulian environmental needs. Human scientists worked to develop adaptive technologies that would allow the crystalline beings to thrive in Earth's gravity and sunlight. 6 months into the mission, the breakthrough came. Using a combination of human theoretical physics and Thulian crystal technology, engineers created the first stable wormhole anchor between Thulia and Earth. What had been a 6-month journey became instantaneous. The evacuation rate increased exponentially. Billions, not millions, could now be saved. In the final days before Thulia became uninhabitable, High Counselor Isia stood with Captain Rice, now Admiral Rice, watching the last shuttles depart. "Your people have changed galactic history," she said softly, "not through conquest or technology, but through compassion." Rice shook his head. "We just did what anyone should have done." "But no one else did," Isia reminded him. "Only humans." As their shuttle lifted off from the dying world, carrying the last 5,000 Thulians, Rice looked down at the crystal cities, beginning to crack under the heat of the increasingly violent solar flares. Beauty created over 9 millennia, soon to be cosmic dust. But the people who had created that beauty would live on. 1 year later, on Earth, Admiral Rice stood with High Counselor Isia on a hillside overlooking New Thulia, a city of crystal and steel where human and Thulian architecture blended in breathtaking harmony. Thulian children played alongside human children, their crystalline forms glittering in Earth's sunlight. "The Galactic Council has requested a formal alliance with Earth," Isia informed him. "It seems humans are now considered valuable partners." Rice smiled. "Because we have impressive technology." "No," Isia replied, her form pulsing with warm gold light, the Thulian expression of joy. "Because you have something far rarer in this galaxy, something that makes the impossible possible." "And what's that?" Rice asked. "Courage to answer when the universe calls for help." In the decades that followed, humanity's reputation spread throughout the galaxy. They were young, yes, technologically behind many species certainly, but they possessed something that older civilizations had calculated away generations before, an irrational, beautiful willingness to reach out when others were falling. The galactic community began to change, slowly but surely. Non-interference doctrines were reconsidered. Cost-benefit analyses began to include factors previously dismissed as emotional variables. And when disasters struck, when civilizations faced extinction, when pleas echoed across the stars, they were increasingly met not with silence, but with the simple human response: "We're on our way. Hold on."